All right. Awesome. I just want to say first, thank you for having me. It's such a privilege to get to be here and speak to you. I don't run into anybody in town who hasn't heard of Sock River Cowboy Church. So this is exciting. This is fun. And I hope I don't bore you too much. I have a reputation for being a bit of a nerd, and I like to use a lot of words, and I like to use them fast. So y'all just need to listen quick, okay? And while I get all my stuff set up here, I'll do this in a minute. So, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He created the entirety of it and everything in it in 6 days, right? On the seventh day, he rested. He ceased from his work. He blessed it, and he made it holy. On it, he ceased from all the creating that he had done. Let's pray together. Holy God, thank you for this church, for these people, for a time to come together, to sing music, to worship you, to learn about you. Thank you for who you are and for what you've done for us. Be with us tonight. And I pray that you would help me say the right thing and bless the words that you've given me. In Jesus' name I ask. Amen. All right. I'm going to go set this down. You can talk amongst yourselves.
Would it be better if I moved over here?
I'm used to youth group.
It doesn't matter how, as long as you stay this way, you're good. Whatever you want to do.
Okay. I had 2 candlesticks when I left the house, so we'll just pretend there's 2. Okay. So, just a quick little history of everything that's happened to this point. After creation, man sinned. We sinned. That began our separation from God. In very little time, the earth became so entirely corrupt, so completely perverted, so entirely different and sinful from what it had started out as, that God flooded it. Flooded everything and started over with one man, Noah, and his family. Everything went and we started over. Okay, after the earth began to be repopulated, there rose a man named Abraham. Everybody heard of Abraham? Abraham. And God called him out from where he was and told him to go on a journey. And that's all he told him to do. And then Abraham had a son named Isaac, and Isaac had a son named Jacob. And Jacob had lots of sons, and he had one son named Joseph. Joseph was sold into slavery. His other brothers did not like him for reasons we don't need to get into tonight, but he was sold into slavery to Egypt. So, recap, we've got creation, sin, depravity, flood, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Egypt. Yes, he was sold into slavery to Egypt. The brief history of time. When they were in Egypt, over a course of a few hundred years, they became slaves. They went from being a prosperous family to being slaves in Egypt. And the oppression was great. It said that God heard the cry out, and he rose up a savior for them, a redeemer, whose name was Moses. Moses, I don't know if you've all seen the movie, heard the story, let my people go. He got everybody out of Egypt. Moses. And after they had crossed the sea and were in the desert, they had their first taste of freedom. Their first taste of freedom, and God gave them laws and guidelines and a calendar and formed their identity. And that's where we pick up today. All right, so in the desert, after Egypt, God gave the 10 commandments. We are very familiar with these commandments. The first 4, 1 through 4, deal with our relationship with our Creator. And the next 6 Numbers 5 through 10 deal with our relationships with one another. Until recently, you could see copies of these in government buildings and schools everywhere, but I digress. After the Ten Commandments, he sent instructions on how to do their yearly calendar. I find this interesting. God sent not just instructions on how to live, not do's and don'ts, but he gave them a calendar. He gave them a schedule. He gave them appointed times, things to do. He set up on day 4 of creation, actually, if you go back and you read the account in Genesis, it says that he gave lights in the sky, signs to mark days, years, and a very interesting word that we find over and over and over in the Old Testament. And I want you to learn a Hebrew word with me tonight. Everybody say Moedim.
Moedim.
Moedim. This, some translations of our Bible call this, they call this appointed times, or they call it seasons. But what it really is it's holy appointments. Moedim. He said right back in the first poem that talks about the creation of the world on day 4, lights in the sky as signs for days, years, and Moedim. This is important. I want you to keep up with it. Okay. Anyway, after they're still in the desert, you can find in the book of Leviticus chapter 23, and we're not going to go there, but if you are keeping notes for later, in Leviticus chapter 23, this begins where he lists out and describes the 7 feasts to keep. You'll find God is interesting with numbers. Every time there is a number mentioned in the Bible, pay attention to other numbers like it and what it means. Numbers are always significant. So there are 7 feasts given. This is a number of completion that God uses over and over and over. Okay, so we have the first feast that's listed in Leviticus 23. The first one that they're given, it's actually not part of the 7. The first one that's given is the Sabbath. It is the day that God rested, day 7. The first one that is given is the Sabbath. And then they go into the 7, they call them Feasts of the Lord. We start with Passover, Pesach. Passover is back from the time when they were in Egypt, when they were being liberated, when they were being freed. God sent an angel of death to kill the firstborn of all the Egyptians, but to the children of Israel, if they would go into a home and paint the blood of a sacrificial lamb over their door, the angel of death would pass them over and would not kill them. He would spare them. This is the final plague that God sent that freed the children of Israel, so they remember the Passover every year. Right after that begins the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Matzo. In this feast, because they had to hurry so quickly to leave, they could not rise their bread. You ever make yeast, especially if you make sourdough yeast, it takes a day to rise. They had no time for this, so they had to make unleavened bread that they could take with them quickly and go. And every year we remember this, the Feast of Matzo. And immediately after that, we have the Feast of First Fruits. It's the first little harvest that we get in the spring. And then after that, we have the Feast of Shavuot. It's the feast we call Pentecost. It's 50 days, 5 weeks approximately after Passover. They count something called the Omer, but they wait from Passover to Pentecost. And this is one grouping of feasts, the spring feasts. And then in the fall, we have the Feast of Trumpets. We call it Yom Teruah. Can you say Yom Teruah?
Yom Teruah.
Awesome. And after that, we have the Feast of Atonement. Can you say Yom Kippur?
Yom Kippur.
You guys are great. And after that, we have the Feast of Tabernacles. And I can't say that one well, so we're not going to learn it. Tabernacles. It's easy, right? Okay. And these laws, the 10 Commandments, the sacrificial code, the fulfilling of the written law, and the feasts, this makes up the next 1,400 years of Jewish history. Then came Jesus. There's always some scripture tension about the laws, the codes, the rituals that are put forth in the Old Testament, because they are a shadow, a preview of the reality which was to come. So while these seem esoteric. They seem hard to understand. They seem very specific but needless. They were a shadow of that which was to come. When Jesus came and he took the sins of the entire people on himself, he fulfilled all the sacrifices talked about in the Old Testament. There's no need for killing a lamb. There's no need for killing a ram. There's no need for killing a bull. There's no need for a handful of grain offered. There's no need for a wine offering. There's no need for a salt offering. All of the hundreds of offerings that are listed and described in the first 5 books of this Bible, there is no need for them anymore, not because they don't matter, but because they have been fulfilled in the man Jesus. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
All right. So, the first 4 feasts that we talked about, we've got Passover, unleavened bread, then we've got, sorry, I'm nervous, so let's get them right. Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and Pentecost. These are very, very importantly connected with prophecy. Everyone say prophecy.
Prophecy.
Prophecy is not necessarily talking about things that are to come. A prophet is one who speaks from God. And God would speak through mouthpieces, certain men and women that he would set up, and he would tell them what he was doing or what he was going to do. And he had said from the beginning, from creation, from the fall in the Garden of Eden, that he was going to send a Savior. It said that the serpent would strike at his heel, but that he would crush his head. He was talking about Jesus. Jesus was coming. This has been the plan from the beginning. Something I want you to understand as I talk to you tonight, as I talk to you Sunday morning, God has always been doing what he is doing and what he's going to do.
Right.
He changes not. He does not have any shadow of turning. And we'll find as we read scripture, things are important for these reasons. Because they happened, because they are happening, and because they are going to happen. I just want that to stay in your mind as we go through. So the first 4 feasts and the types that they were talking about which were going to come, Jesus fulfilled every one of them, and he fulfilled them perfectly. It's interesting. Jesus was crucified on a very important, very specific feast of the Lord. He was crucified on Passover, on Pesach, on the first one mentioned in Leviticus 23. He was crucified and he was buried. See, the days start at night. In Genesis it says there was evening and then there was morning the first day. The day starts in the evening. And so he was crucified on Passover, but the next day, the day of first fruits, the day of unleavened bread, is when he was buried. There's an interesting story to this. If you ever have been to a Seder dinner when they do the Passover, they have a piece of the matzo bread that they call the afikomen, and they actually hide it in a piece of cloth. And they send the kids out to go hunt for it. It is a type, and it always has been a type of the Christ who is to be buried to come. Even if not all the Jews recognize that, it has always been a picture of the crucified Christ who is to come and save the world. So we have him died. He died on Passover. He was buried on unleavened bread. He rose. Wow, I'm getting confused. He rose during the Feast of First Fruits, and it calls him the firstborn of the dead. So he rose on the Feast of First Fruits, and then the Holy Spirit came on the day of Pentecost. It happened on these signs, on these seasons at this time. It happened on the Moedim that God had set forth from day 4 of creation when he put the signs and the stars and the planets and the moons in the sky for times and seasons and appointed schedules. God has had this written down. He has had this scheduled from the beginning, and that is fascinating. That is the ancient, almighty, powerful God that we serve.
Amen.
It's phenomenal. I can't get past it. So the first 4 of the 7 feasts have been fulfilled. The next 3 are coming. We'll talk about that on Sunday too. We're going to go into the final 3 feasts, the days of the Lord, the Yom Tov, and what they mean for when he comes back, and how we can look for the signs and the seasons and the appointed times. Anyway, okay, so all of that was a really long introduction because I need you to have this information base before we go in to talk about what I came here to talk about tonight. And there's a word I want you to say with me, I want you to say Shabbat. Say Shabbat. Shabbat. Shabbat is the word Sabbath. It's where we get Sabbath. The word Saturday in most languages comes from this word Shabbat. And this day is special and it's different. The 7 feasts of the Lord were given, but Shabbat was the only one that was commanded to be kept. The 7 feasts were given, but Shabbat is in the 10 Commandments. And the Jews, the rabbis, the sages, they call this day the Queen of Feasts. They actually have a song, Lecha Dodai, where they welcome in this Queen of Feasts. It's Sabbath, Shabbat. And let me explain to you something about Sabbath. Especially Puritan America, when it started, when we had this day of rest that everyone had to take Sundays off, and you weren't allowed to do anything fun, and you had to wear your dressiest clothes, and you weren't allowed to play, and you weren't allowed to smile, and you weren't allowed to have fun, and it was more work, but in a different way. This is not Shabbat. This is not Sabbath. This is not the Queen of Feasts. The Queen of Feasts begins 18 minutes before sundown on Friday night. 18 minutes before sundown on Friday night, the mother of the home would light the Sabbath candle, 2 of them, and 2 is important. Now there have been some later traditions where they've had the 2 main ones and they'll light a separate small one for each child, but they have to be at least 2. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But you would light the Sabbath candles. That's the last work you're allowed to do. Not even allowed to extinguish your match. You drop it on the floor and you let it go out, because you're not allowed to extinguish anything. And then they would, I thought I brought 2 candlesticks. I only brought 1, so I'm not going to show you, but I'll sing for you if you want. Then they would, so they'd have their 2 candlesticks sitting here, and they've lit them. And they would run their hand. I don't know if you've ever seen Fiddler on the Roof, or a movie where we're going into Jewish life, but you have the moms, and they'd bring their hands over the flames 3 times. They'd cover their eyes, they'd bless the family, then they'd begin Shabbat. So the reason they did this was interesting. They lit the candles, they performed the mitzvah. Can you say mitzvah? Mitzvah. They performed the mitzvah. That means a command. They performed the command, they light it, they let it drop. Then they bring, what they're doing here is they're welcoming the spirit of Sabbath. Some of the sages say because of the 3-part triality of humanity, the mind, body, and soul. There's some Kabbalistic rules. Kabbalah is a study of the hidden, deeper things that some sages and mystics go into, and there's some reasoning behind the 3, but Messianic Jews have hypothesized that it might be because we've always known about the triune nature of God, and we welcome in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Then you cover your eyes, because part of the mitzvah of appreciating Sabbath is enjoying it. Part of the mitzvah, part of the commandment to keep this Sabbath day holy is to enjoy it. So you cover your eyes so you couldn't enjoy the Sabbath lights yet. Isn't that kind of beautiful? Okay, so you've lit them, you've brought them in, you cover your eyes, and they say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushenu b'mitzvotav v'tzivenu lihadlik ner shel Shabbat Kodesh. They'd open their eyes. They'd greet Shabbat Shalom. What they said is, blessed are you, our Lord and our God, the King of the universe. You have sanctified us with these commandments, and you have made us kindle these lights for the holy Sabbath. Then they open, they can appreciate, they say Shabbat Shalom, and from then on, they are in a different plane. They are in a different place. They have left, they have ceased the previous 6 days, and they have begun a day of rest. Okay, so I want to look at, there's 2 places in the Old Testament, actually in the first 5 books, there's 2 places where it talks about the 10 Commandments. And they're given once in Exodus chapter 20. And it says there, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And then in Deuteronomy, it says, in Deuteronomy chapter 5, if you're keeping notes, it says, observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy. These are two separate, distinct Hebrew words. We've got Zakor, say Zakor. And we've got Shamor. You guys are awesome. Okay, so we remember the Sabbath day and we observe. Zakor is to remember, Shamor is to observe. That's why we have two candlesticks. Because we remember. Every time we light them, every time we open up ourselves to Sabbath, we remember and we observe. This word observe is actually better than the word observe, but there's just not a great English translation. A better way to describe this word observe means to keep watch or to guard. So Zakor, remember, Shamor, guard, keep watch. This is interesting, and we'll get there a little bit, but if you're not seeing where I'm going, if we're not tracking, you're not listening hard enough. Okay, so here we go. And then we have the same way that everything would go each night that we had a Passover meal. So you'd have the lighting of the candles, the blessing, and then we go into hand washing. You'd pour a cup of water over this hand 3 times, then a cup of water over this hand 3 times, and there's silence until you eat bread. It's interesting. I actually ordered some challah bread to bring tonight, but I didn't make it happen. So So you wash your hands, there's silence, and then you eat the bread. The bread is made with honey. It's sweet. And you dip it in salt. It's interesting, all the Old Testament sacrifices were mixed with salt before they were made. So this is a sacrifice of praise that we're bringing. You dip the bread in the salt, you eat it, you drink the wine, you say a Kiddush over the wine, it's a blessing over the wine, and then you have dinner. Today, and honestly, it's been going this way for 3,000 years, Jews, people who are Sabbath observant, meet together in their homes. They'll wear their best clothes, they'll put out their best tablecloths and china, and they make it the queen of feasts. They say it is better to keep Sabbath than to keep the high holy days. It is better to keep Sabbath. It is more important to keep Sabbath than the high holy days. It's the best feast of the whole year. The best food is made. It is an air of celebration, of holiday, and they do this every week. Then they'll go to sleep. And the next morning they'll wake up and they'll go to shul, they'll go to tabernacle, where there'll be a worship service where they learn about God. The cantor will sing, and then they'll have lunch, which nobody had to cook because it was already done. That sounds great for the moms. Then there's a nap. I want to be a part of a religion where a nap is on the schedule. I'm just saying. And then we have something called Havdalah. Havdalah is the last blessing of the day, where we separate from the holy day and we go back to our work week. Okay, I want to explain to you how radical of an idea Shabbat was 1,000 years before Christ, 1,400 years before Christ. There were no 5-day work weeks. There was no Saturdays and Sundays off. You worked every day. They were slaves. They were forced to work every day. There were no days off. This was a radical idea. It separated the children of Israel from everyone else on the planet. It completely changed your culture. It completely changed your schedule. You could no longer mix in with the people who were not Sabbath observant because everything about the way you lived your life was different. In light of that, are we tracking? Do you see where I'm going? Okay. There is a saying that the sages and the rabbis have said. It's actually really popular. You probably have heard it. But this is the way they view Sabbath. They say that more than Israel has kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept Israel. They believe that keeping this symbol, this mitzvah, this feast every week, this has been what has kept them through the millennia. Okay, so that's all of the introduction I'm going to give. Let's open the Word. If you have your Bibles with you, if you go to Matthew chapter 12, I'm going to read verses 1 through 8. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. And his disciples became hungry and began to pick the heads of grain to eat. But when the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples, they do what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." But he said to them, Have you not read what David did when he became hungry? He and his companions, how they entered the house of God, and they ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor those who were with him, but it was for the priests alone. Or have you not read in the law that on Sabbath, the priests in the temple, they break the Sabbath, and yet they are innocent? But I say to you that something greater than the temple is here. But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would have not condemned the innocent here with me. This is very, very interesting and radical, and it made the Pharisees angry, because Jesus was basically saying, I do not care about the rules that you have added on to this feast. I do not care. And I am telling you something even more. I am the Lord of this Sabbath. And I'm going to tell you something more. This Sabbath was not made for man to serve it. It was made to serve man. This was a gift that God gave. And then there's a little quote that he gets at the end. He said, but if you had understood what I was saying, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, then you wouldn't have been upset. This goes back to actually 2 Old Testament prophets. I won't make you go there, but Isaiah and Hosea both have a rant that they go on where they say, where they're talking from the Lord, that God is saying, all of these religious rules, do's and do nots that you have put on my holy days, they call them detestable. They stink in my nose. Everything that you have added on to what I say, I don't want it anymore. I don't want your sacrifices. I don't want your religiosity. I want mercy. I want you to have compassion on others. I don't want you to follow the rules to the letter of law. If you have to pick one, pick mercy. Jesus actually echoed this later when he was giving a diatribe against the Pharisees. He said, woe to you, you Pharisees and scribes of the law, you hypocrites. He mentions that you pay a tithe of all of your herbs, your mint, your cumin, your dill, but I wanted you to have justice and mercy. You should have done these things first and then paid your tithes. It's very interesting that God repeatedly, over and over and over in the scriptures, like he does over and over and over, he wants us to have a heart like his, not to follow his rule book perfectly. He doesn't want us to win the game. He wants us to win his heart. That is the God that we serve, and that's exciting because there is none righteous. No, not one can fulfill the law completely. And he says he wants us instead to be like him. Okay, so let's move on just a little bit. I want to talk about this number 7, this Sabbath thing that we do. Not only is it a beautiful day of rest, a day of ceasing the work, and not just work, it's ceasing from creation. Because it's still work to do things on Sabbath, but you're not creating. You are being like God. You're taking a break from the things that you're creating in your life, and that'll come back into play in a minute. But we have the 7th day of the week that God has set up. These are the Moedim from the 4th day of creation. The Sabbath, which is the 4th commandment. That's interesting. The 4th day of creation is fulfilled in the 4th commandment. Just pay attention to that. So the 7th day you have Sabbath, where it is the queen of feasts. It is the best holiday of the year, and you get one every week. It's Christmas every week. Then you have the 7th month, which we call Tishri. This is a month dedicated to high holy days, to special sacrifices, to special repentance and drawing into the Lord. Then we have the 7th year. Have you ever heard of the Shemitah? Everybody say Shemitah. Have you heard of the Shemitah year? Every 7 years, you would no longer work your fields. You'd lie them fallow. You'd let them rest. Every 7 years, all debts would be canceled. All of the books would go back to zero. Every 7 years in the land of Israel, you had a Shemitah year. Very important because we're in one right now and it ends this September. Every 7th Shemitah, after there were 7 Shemitahs in a row, there was a 50th year. So 7 times 7 is 49. And you have a 50th year, the year of Jubilee. Jubilee is a super Shemitah. It is where not only are all of the debts erased and all of the fields lie fallow, but all of the captives, all of the slaves, are set free. Now we have an idea that it's not my own, but it is a little radical. We are entering into a 7th millennium of history. Even those who aren't followers of God can see that we have right about 6,000 years of written history. We don't have much past that. We don't have anything past that. So they kind of assume that either something was lost 6,000 years ago, or maybe man had just found the ability, the technology to write things 6,000 years ago. But if you actually add up the chronologies and the histories, we'll find out that Earth, the 7 days of creation, occurred right at 6,000 years ago. And we are getting ready to enter into a 7,000 years. And throughout the Bible, when it talks about when the Messiah will come back and reign, it talks about he will reign for 1,000 years. God has set up a millennial Sabbath, a millennial queen of feasts to last 1,000 years when he is coming back to rule over his people. The signs and the stars and the planets and the calendars and the schedules that he has put forth, he is doing again. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
What he has done, he is doing and will do. This is the God who we have always served, and he has never changed. Okay, so I want you to understand that the Sabbath cycle is foundational to how God relates to us. From creation to when he comes back, to the reappearing. This is also interesting, and I just put this together this week, and if I am a heretic, please talk to me about it later, but we know that Jesus was crucified on a Friday, right? Well, that's generally what is accepted. He was crucified on a Friday. Friday is what we call the day of preparation for Sabbath. On Friday, you would make the extra so that you'd have food the next day when you couldn't work. You would feed your livestock extra so they could eat the next day. You would get all of your clothes done, you get all of your work done, because when that sunset hits, you're finished. There is no more work. You cease from your creative work. So on Friday, you prepare. On Friday, Jesus was crucified. And right before sunset is when he died. He spent Sabbath in the grave. He was gone all day Saturday, and when they went to go find him Sunday morning, he was already up. I know this is crazy, but I put this together this week, and I really believe that was intentional. That Jesus spent Sabbath in the grave because there is something important that he said right before he died. Does anybody remember what that was? It is finished. It is complete. Creation is crowned. It is done. The sacrificial system is completely filled. There is now nothing that separates man from God, because his blood filled it. He declared it on Friday afternoon. It is finished.
Amen.
Then he spent Saturday and Sabbath. There is now nothing left to do. Jesus is our Sabbath rest. I have always believed that the feasts that the Lord gave us, they're not the Jewish feasts, and I'm guilty of calling them the Jewish feasts. These are not the Jewish feasts. These are the feasts of the Lord. They were put for us not to be heavy burdens to carry around, but to zakor, to remember, and to shamor, to keep watch over. They are beautiful. They are parties. They are given to man. We are not made for them. They were made for us. We can remember on our Sabbaths, we remember that we were created, because the 7th day of creation is what began Sabbath. So we remember we are not our own makers. We remember that we are redeemed. We can then shamor, we can keep guard over the faith that has been given once for all generations. We keep watch for his return. This is the things that we are given to Zakor and Shamor. And wouldn't it be beautiful every night in your homes, every Friday night in your homes, to light these candles? Not out of keeping rules, not out of something extra to do, but because weekly, as a people, we remember and we're keeping watch for when he comes back. Jesus told a couple stories about workers, how the boss went off and they had to look busy when he came back so they wouldn't get in trouble. He told the story of 10 virgins, how the bridegroom went off. And when he came back, some of them had run out to get more oil because they hadn't kept good stock. And only the 5 that stayed got to go with him to the wedding ceremony. We are to be busy about the Lord's work. We were given Sabbath not as a strict, difficult, heavy thing to keep. We don't have to keep Sabbath. You realize this isn't a salvation issue? We do not have to keep Sabbath. There are debates everywhere among the religious intelligent, of which I am not one, but there are debates everywhere about whether or not we are supposed to keep Sabbath or whether that's been abolished for Christians, and it gets ugly and nasty. And what I'm saying, we do not have to. Not a salvation issue, but brothers and sisters, we can. We can take a day off every week. We can enjoy family and food and rest and not striving to make the next dollar or to create the life we have set. But we can join in the Lord with our ceasing of our work. We can light the candles to remember that we are not our own and to wait for his coming intentionally. This is not a burden. I have a question. Do you have to celebrate Christmas? No, but do you look forward to it? Yeah, this is the thing I want to give you. It's not a difficult thing, but it is a joy that we get to have every year. Okay, so I have something I want to ask you. This is joy. This is a picture of his coming. I'm going to read one more passage from the Bible in the book of Hebrews, chapter 4. It says, Therefore, let us fear, if while a promise remains of entering his rest, any one of you may seem to have come short of it. For indeed, we have had good news preached to us, just as they also, but the word they heard did not profit them, because it was not united by faith in those who had heard. For we who have believed, enter that rest, just as he said. And although his works were finished from the foundation of the world. Okay, that's kind of difficult to understand, and I've got it in a different translation, but what they're saying is the promise remains of entering into his rest. This wasn't abolished. The promise remains that we can join what God is doing. And God takes Sabbath. And God sets up a calendar of sevens. We know what he did, we know what he's doing, and we know what he's going to do by this calendar that we get to keep. It is a privilege and a joy to join into it with him. And I encourage you, try it sometime. Because this isn't a heavy thing to do. What do you need to rest from? What do you need to cease doing? What kind of 6 days of crazy can you take a break from and rest from? He has finished the work. You don't have to work. He's given us his calendar. We see that he is coming. We see that he has set this up from the foundations of the world. So cease trying to get to heaven. Cease trying to please him. Cease adding to what he has finished, because you don't have to. You don't have to add to the work that he has done, because he who has began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. This completed that they use is the same word as Sabbath. He has given you a break. We just need to light the candles. We just need to remember who we are and whose we are, and to watch for him to come back. Keep guard. This is the beauty and the gift of Sabbath. Without it, you can't understand the rest of the feasts. Without it, you can't understand what he's doing when he comes back. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I wish you a Sabbath of peace, and may you enter into his rest. On Sunday, we're gonna, if you'll come back and talk with me again, we're gonna talk about the next 3 feasts that are coming. These are 3 other Sabbaths where the normal work of the week ceases, and we get to see precisely what is left before he comes back. And it is exciting. I'm not making any of it up. It's all in here. You wouldn't want me to make it up because I'm not that creative. But our God is coming. Light the candles. Remember that he came once and watch for him to come again.
Amen.
Thank you for letting me come.